Recording. I'd like to call us to order. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to acknowledge Trustee Poitras is joining us via Google Hangout today. Turn it over to Mr. Trustee Long here for acknowledgement of land.
Thank you. Okay, welcome to our division office located on the traditional land and territory of the Niitsitapi, Piikani, Kainai, and Siksika, the Blackfoot people within the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta.
Thank you. And if we could all stand for O Canada. Recommendation that the October 14, 2020 consent agenda be approved by the Board of Trustees as presented or amended. Can I get someone to make that motion, please? Trustee Burdette. Any changes or amendments? Trustee Toon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two items to bring forward. I've sent them to Nikki for the agenda.
Sorry, Trustee Toon, we are just approving the consent agenda. I haven't approved the agenda yet.
Oh, not, okay.
Is that what you were wanting with
Yes,
the agenda?
I will patiently wait.
Okay.
Thank you.
So if there's no errors or omissions on the consent approval of the minutes or anything else in there? Seeing none? All in favor? Passed. Okay, moving on to any emergent changes to the agenda. Recommendation that the October 14, 2020 regular board meeting agenda be approved by the Board of Trustees as presented or amended. Can I get someone to make that motion? Trustee Yeagas? Open the floor up for discussion. Trustee Toon?
Thank you. So I have two emergent items for consideration. The first motion states that the recommendation that the Board of Trustees send a letter to advocate to the Minister of Education to cancel provincial diploma examinations for the 2020-2021 school year due to COVID-19 and address any student entrance inequities into post-secondaries. And would you like me to read the second one as well?
Well, let's do discussion on the first one first. Any objections to adding an item E4 for the above what Trustee Toon just read? Trustee Yeagas?
Who did he want to send the letter to?
Education Minister.
Yeah,
Okay.
Minister of Education.
In light of yesterday's recent announcement and continued advocacy work by other boards across the province, I feel that we should make the decision because it didn't meet the deadline for the board agenda.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, is there any objection to, or I'll just do the, all in favor of this is going on the agenda is item E4. All in favor? Sorry, I was reading it off of there. E5. That's okay. Okay, Trustee Toon, did you want to go on to your next?
Yes, thank you. I apologize for not getting this in after looking at the scheduling side of things. This needs to happen before our next ASBA zone meeting. So this one is the recommendation that the Board of Trustees approve Brad Toon in running for ASBA Zone 6 Director. The term for director came up, comes due at the FGM, and we don't have a meeting that before our zone meeting that decides that. So I would ask for that to be placed on the agenda as well, please.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of item E6 to add to the agenda? Passed. Thank you. Any other discussion on the agenda? All right, all in favor of the changes to the agenda as presented? Passed. Declaration of conflict of interest. Is there any conflict of interest relating to any of the agenda items for anyone? Trustee, sorry.
I went through the TIBA with what,
That's just, yeah.
so, and I didn't see anything in there that was of conflict.
Okay, thank you. Seeing none. Moving on to action items. E1, capital maintenance and renewal. On September 28, 2020, Mr. Jeff Perry received an email from the capital planning section of Alberta Ed asking for the Livingston Range School Division to identify capital maintenance and renewal projects that remain priorities over the upcoming budget year. The deadline for this submission was given as October 15, 2020. Associate Superintendent Business Services, Mr. Jeff Perry, will discuss proposed projections for the submission. It is the recommendation that the Board of Trustees approve the proposed capital maintenance renewal projects report for submission to the capital planning section of Alberta. Can I get someone to make that motion? Okay, thank you. I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Perry.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So we've provided a list of items that we've discussed here at the board level, or sorry, at the maintenance level, facilities level. Just a little bit about the process. The letter was received, like it indicated, quick turnaround. We did have an opportunity to join in on a conference call with the manager of education in this area. And they gave a little bit more detail with regards to what it's looking like. There's still some unclarity with regards to whether this is a process that they'll use going forward, whether it'll replace the IMR process. At this point, we received funding for IMR in the current year. We anticipate getting that funding, and this is something that they're looking for a list of items in relation to the 2021-22 school year, or I guess it's government budget year, not school year. So we're talking April 1st to March 31st. They're going with the government budget line when they refer to this. So they obviously have significant processes that they have to go through in order to take this to Treasury Board, and so thus the quick turnaround. The criteria for these projects is based on the IMR project. The direction that we were giving as far as what amount we could submit for was follow what your submission was last time in the initiative to get people back to work during the COVID era. We were approved for about $2.2 million at that time frame. So there's obviously thoughts that go on and strategies that, play into what we want to accomplish. The first project that came to mind was the Canyon School air handling electrical upgrade. This is something that has been somewhat prohibitive to us, just given the fact that it's a large-scale project. It would take all our IMR dollars. And so in a year where we potentially have IMR dollars to use, as well as an approval for CMR, we thought that this would be an opportune time to approach this project. It's a project that we've known in the past that has had issues just with the air handling systems that are currently in place, which are pretty non-existent. For the betterment of the school, we would like to have this project as our #1 priority on the list, and that's why you find it there. I just had a conversation with an individual from Alberta Education, and we spoke about asbestos and so forth. So the 2.5 million does have a little bit of a contingency in there, but would not be sufficient to address potentially asbestos. So in discussion, that might be one thing that I need to add to this sheet is the potential of asbestos removal for the Canyon project. And so on your approval, I would submit that if you approve this document, that you make the assumption that I'm going to add a line in there for asbestos for this project in particular. And we're currently in the process of finding out what that might be. We know that there's asbestos in the majority of our schools, and it's fine, and there's no issues with it until you disturb it. In this scenario, we would be disturbing it, and so we would need to ensure that we go through the proper protocols to identify the specific asbestos that might be in this facility and ensure that we address it in that manner. And so I will put a dollar figure onto this. I don't have that dollar figure at this moment to be able to provide you in when you approve the document. So just know that that would be a recommendation of mine in there as well. So I recognize that what's on this list is greater than $2.2 million. When we were approved in the past, we only submitted a recommendation for 2.2 and received all of it. So we don't really know what the threshold is for us, where our limit is. And so we suggest that we have more than that on there, as well as if the dollar amount, I guess one other clarifying item with this is that when we're approved for funding for this CMR, we will have the flexibility, as long as it's an approved project, to use the funding for whichever projects are on our list. So obviously our first project would be the Canyon air handling and electrical upgrades. However, if we don't receive sufficient funding, we have other projects on there that we could move to as well and have the flexibility to do that. And so that's why you see other projects on there. The only other thing that I would add to this document is we just received a recommendation through our insurance provider, ARMIC, or the organization, the consortium that we go through, of certain items that would be beneficial in our jurisdiction for being proactive. And that happens to be flow meters and low temperature meters. And I would like to add this to the bottom of this sheet as well, so that we're addressing some of the areas that would be beneficial to us in ensuring that we don't have any catastrophic losses, such as floods, from water leakages and things of that nature. So that's a second recommendation I would add on to there. Greg is just in the process of getting numbers for that, but so I would ask, when you look at this, to look at the items that are there, and with the additions of asbestos and flow meters / temperature sensors to be able to use for these dollars. I anticipate if they don't give us sufficient dollars to do the Canyon project, that currently we don't have $2.2 million on there. I think this would put us at that level to be able to take advantage of the money that they would be providing. So
I'd like to open the floor up for questions. Trustee Toon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I propose that we add as amended to the end of the motion that is stated to be inclusive of what Mr. Perry highlighted in his report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yep, Trustee McKee?
So just for some clarification on this, so this back to work, I know that the school division did a bunch of, did several other back to work projects, or at least I thought they were. One was up in Nanton when you have done quite a bit of work at the J.D. Foster School there. Now, is that part of this program, or is this additional funding that you're, which is directed toward other projects, like the one stated here?
sure. So the CMR projects that were part of an initiative to get individuals back to work during the COVID era was a separate project that's ongoing and is to be completed. The projects were to be completed by the end of October with the ability to get approval to go beyond that if the project's going longer than was planned. And so that's one project. This is kind of a takeoff of that process. So they're now looking at, for transparency purposes, is what they indicated, having a process where we apply for certain projects that are priority in our jurisdiction. They take those projects and prioritize them and then take them to the Treasury Board to get funding for them. They see it as a separate process. It's not, but it's similar in nature to the process that was taken for the other initiative. And so, again, we're not clear whether this is the new process that's going to be going forward, but they're certainly using this process in anticipating the 2021-2022 budget year for the government. So again, I think we have our IMR funding that we can continue to use, and a plan will come to you next month with regards to what that IMR looks like and what the results were for the prior year, as well as the CMR results for the initiative that we just had. This is planning for the year after for the funding that they will be announcing. Does that answer your question, John?
Any other questions? I'm wondering if at a later date, Jeff, when you have the updated numbers, if you could bring them back to the board, just with the asbestos and the flow meter and temp.
Yeah, for sure. We'll send those out. We'll provide those once we have them. The challenge is the submission deadline is tomorrow for this document, and so I have to have those numbers before tomorrow. But obviously, we won't be able to come back to the board for approval on that.
Yep. All right, the recommendation that the Board of Trustees approve the capital maintenance and renewal projects report for submission to the capital planning section of Alberta Ed as amended. All in favor? Passed. Thank you. Moving on to E2, administration procedure. Trustee Long will discuss the need for an administrative procedure regarding the corporate advertising and or sponsorship. The recommendation from Trustee Long is that the Board of Trustees direct administration to develop an administrative procedure regarding the corporate advertising and or sponsorship. I'd like to turn that over to you, Trustee Long.
Thank you. At a recent Academic and Sports Council meeting of Crow's Nest Pass consolidated parents and staff, it was brought forward that a company had asked to be able to advertise and or sponsor some of our sports teams. And at that time, I didn't have an answer for what our policy was, and now we've realized that we don't have an administrative policy written, a formal one, for non-educational institutions / businesses / corporations that want to advertise or sponsor our schools or the Livingston Range School Division in some way. So my recommendation is that the Board of Trustees direct administration at this time to take some time to develop a formal written policy regarding advertising and sponsorships in our school division.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments? Trustee McKee?
Quite often, you'll see, you know, like if a school or something, I don't know if this still goes on, but maybe you can correct me, Mr. Superintendent. But I mean, on those big score clocks, sometimes you'd see Coca-Cola has been advertised at the bottom of those, you know, of a score clock or something like that, because they would help fund certain projects. And if a school needed a new score clock, they would probably provide some money towards that. Yeah, it's a funny situation. You see it a lot now, like around, even in the hockey rinks now, that a lot of the town businesses are, you know, are purchasing board space around the arena. And so like it's, this is a common occurrence in some avenues, but I mean, how far do you go with it? I can relate to your concern. I mean, do you want to have a bunch of sport, you know, like your tags on the uniform saying, you know, this and this company and so forth? I'm not overly sure about that. So, I mean, I think what you're saying certainly has a certain level of concern, because how far do you go with that?
Go ahead, Mr. Perry.
I'll just give a little bit of background context around what we currently do in this area. Obviously, there's been donations and sponsorships and things of that nature in the past. Greg did talk with me, and I indicated that we don't necessarily have a procedure. We don't have a procedure on everything that we do in the jurisdiction. I'm not opposed to a procedure in this area. Other jurisdictions do have policies or procedures in this area, so it's not that I'm not opposed to it or anything. But we have had ongoing donations and things of that nature, advertising in some of our schools. Typically, we've left it up to the school to get a hold of us, and then we'd have a discussion and give them approval on certain aspects of that, especially when it's advertising. And we've given direction with regards to appropriate, inappropriate, and so forth, what we would support and what we wouldn't support. And you can see in the Crow's Nest Pass where they advertise on the little garage there as you're going by. So we've had discussions with them in the past. It was likely a previous administrator that would have been part of that. So typically, the administrator would contact us and we would have a discussion in regards to what the proposal is. But I'm not opposed to what Greg's suggesting as far as putting together a procedure so it's clear for administrators to know what they can and can't do. And we're getting in a world, like John says, where more and more funds to support certain activities are coming through sponsorships and things of that nature. So,
Any other questions or comments? Oh, Trustee Long, did you have your
Okay,
hand
it's
up?
me. Yeah.
Oh, Trustee.
Sorry, I put my hand up on the screen and I clicked the raise my hand button. I was trying to be so good. I just have a question or concern with asking the admin to do this, because I know that every school does it differently and every principal runs their school a little bit differently. I know some of our schools have fundraising committees, some have specific committees in regards to sports or like a band program. So I just wanted to ask the admin, is this something that you see as needing and something that you could create one size fits all for the division, or is this something that is better left to administration of each school. And as it changes, then it may also change with the administration. So I just wanted some clarity on how the admin felt about making a divisional, or if it is more per school basis.
Mr. Perry, do you want to respond to that?
Sure. It's kind of funny because we actually began the process of creating a procedure a little while, a couple of years ago or whatever, and we never finalized it. But I think what we would look at is something that provides direction, certain limitations, and then allows for creativity beyond that within the schools and the ability to meet the needs as they see fit, as long as they're within the guidelines that we propose in that procedure. So, did you hear that, Lacey?
Thank you. Trustee Long?
There's something very strange happening here because Mr. Perry took my words again. That's twice he's done it. Yeah, so I'll just rephrase what I was going to say, and that's the policy could be quite general. It doesn't have to be specific, but gives direction towards administration, organizations, the stakeholders we have in the school system, so that they're not at a meeting and it's, well, I don't know, what do we do? And it's passed on and passed on. They would have something general to look at and then work from there.
Trustee Toon?
Thank you. I appreciate the questions that have come forward, and Trustee Long for bringing this forward. I think it's really important and discussion for us to have, and sitting in another neighboring board's board meeting and they approve every single donation that comes in. I don't think that's a level of governance that any of us are striving for. But I think it's important to have that continuity between changes in administration and the overarching guidelines that have been spoken about to help support our community, so we can have that consistency. Because we all appreciate the dollars that come into our schools to support our programming and extracurricular activities, and none of us wants to hamper that. And I know as a parent, my children have benefited from the community dollars that have supported our schools, and I want that to continue.
Thank you. Any trustee? Yes.
Yeah, I think with the growth of some of the ski academy and that, and Chad, you can correct me if I'm saying something wrong, please. I think, there has been groups that sponsorship and that, and they advertise on their, what they pull out to the wagon or whatever they pull out to the ski hill. But yeah, I agree. I think we got a hockey academy and that growing up, and they're going to be getting sponsorships, and a lot of sponsors want to have some kind of recognition for this. So I think it is important that we have guidelines so that somebody, whatever it is, can look for it. And Chad, I don't think the ski academy had any problems with this, did they?
No, first things first is the wagon, or the spot for skis is broken, so it doesn't get to be out as much as it should. But on a serious note, the jackets in which they wear do have emblems on there, but those were purchased through the LSA Society, which is responsible for fundraising and grants, and it's somewhat separate of the school, although it's with some of our athletes. So society was established to go through that process of donations and community sponsorships, and that's where, and also the ski van as well, to be able to use that through the society.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. Did you want to close, Trustee Long?
Just in conclusion, that yes, I think it's important that there is something written and formal that people can access when these situations come up.
Thank you. All in favor? Passed. All right, moving on to E3, professional learning. Time will be provided for any trustees to discuss, report, or seek approval for the Board of Professional Learning events. Recommendation that the Board of Trustees approve the following trustees to attend the following professional development. Trustees Poitras and Long, a PD session, virtual CSBA Indigenous panel on October 8th, 2020. Can I get someone to make that motion? Trustee Yegus? Should just beat you out. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Pass, thank you.
Can I add on something here?
Sure.
One of the things I've been noticing with the information I've been sending out is that free webinars and that, or free things, seem to be disappearing now. They're starting to charge for them. So you will be getting some information, it's still virtual, but there are charges. So please read them carefully and don't assume that they're free. And so you'll have to, with any of these that I'm sending out, you'll have to get permission because they're not through the ASBA. You'll have to get permission from the board for it to go to them. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Trustee McKee?
First of all, I would like to thank Mr. Long for his report, and it was very, I just quickly read through it. I mean, a lot of the things that you wrote about this school division is currently doing, I mean, this school division has a great respect for the First Nations elders, and they are in several schools. So, I mean, that's just one example that you talked about in a representation. There's a certain number of things that one can always improve on, but there's a lot of things that that you mentioned here, the school division already is doing, and they are certainly have the First Nations participate in the schools themselves.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Trustee Long?
It was an excellent session, and I hope it continues. The idea was that this was just a feeling out session, see how much involvement there was, and there was over 100 trustees from across Canada that were there on the online meeting, which I hope was a really good turnout, and I hope this is something they continue in the future.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Poitras?
Sorry. I also just wanted to ask the board for some clarification on not this meeting, but I attended virtually the board of directors meetings. It was my understanding from our previous discussion that when we attended ASBA events that was covered as a trustee and that we didn't need approval for it. But after talking to our chair and looking at our remuneration stuff, it appears that the ASBA board of directors meetings, if we choose to attend, would not fall under that. And I'm wondering if that was everyone else's understanding, and if it is your understanding that it wouldn't fall under, not needing approval, then I would like approval for attending the board of directors meetings, which I did attend, and I may seek, to attend them again, because I think it's so sitting in on those meetings, the board of directors meetings, especially now that we can do it as it's opened up virtually. There's a lot of conversations that happen at the board of directors meetings before they are in camera that are very beneficial for trustees to hear. So.
Okay, thank you. Anyone care to comment on that? I think under our policy, it always has been that only our FGM and SGM has been, you don't need approval to attend under ASBA. We've never had anyone attend a board of directors meeting before, so I don't know if that would follow under our personal PD that we would need approval for, or, because you can always look up the Board of Directors meetings anytime online. So I don't know if you need to attend them virtually at the same time, but those are my clarification thoughts on that. So Trustee Yegus?
I
Yeah,
was just
and
gonna,
part of the reason it was unclear to me is
Sorry.
because I was thinking of our ASBA zone meetings that we can attend. And those are paid for, not by the zone, but are paid for under our remuneration as well. So I think that's where I was a little confused.
Trustee Yegus?
yes, we agreed that the fall and spring GM plus our zone meetings are general meetings only. The executive meetings are not paid for by the board. So I would think something like the board of director meetings, what you could do is have everybody attend them, and that could end up to be expensive in the long run. So I think if you want to attend them, you'll have to ask permission with that one and get the board permission on it, because our policy really doesn't address that. I guess never came up in the past, so maybe this is something we'll have to look at as a policy committee. But yeah, right now, I would say no.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Toon?
Thank you. Trustee Yegus stated a lot of the same things. I appreciate Trustee Poitras attending that. I think there is some benefit in doing that. But in saying that, it's a completely different thing than our general meetings of our zone, where you can participate and be active in discussion and debate, and there's PD things to do, as opposed to just listening and not participating. You, as calling in or sitting in the room of a board of directors meeting, you're not allowed to comment or participate in any way. So I think could be a severely hampering to our budget if we started approving attendance at that from even PD funds, because I think it's great, but if a trustee wants to use their personal PD dollars for that, I don't know if I'd even support doing that, but it's their personal choice. But they would still need to bring forward the recommendation to ask for permission from the board. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other, did you have your hand up, Trustee Poitras?
Yeah, so I just want to say, yeah, I was unclear on it when I attended the meeting, and after looking with our board chair, I was kind of getting the same feeling as what you guys were getting, is that this was separate. So I thank you all for your input and clarity, and I'll just leave it at that for now. And if we decide we need to discuss it and look at it, but in the future we can. But I agree that those meeting minutes are online and we can see them, and it's not an active participation. So I appreciate the discussion and the clarity.
Thank you. Any other questions or comment around PD? Trustee Yegus?
Oh, I was just going to add on to that. If Trustee Poitras feels that this is something you want to do, then she could ask the policy committee to add this on, and then it'll be brought to the board to vote on. So then it will be addressed in that way. That would be the process.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, thank you. All right, we'll move on to Trustee PD budget. In response to the notice of motion from September 9, 2020, Trustee Brad Toon brought forth a notice of motion for the October 14th, 2020 board meeting that the Board of Trustees approve holding $500 from each trustee's 2020-2021 PD funding for the purpose of providing an additional $500 to the next year's trustees' PD budget. Trustee Toon, will discuss information regarding the trustee PD budget. The recommendation on the floor from Trustee Toon is that the Board of Trustees approve holding $500 from each trustee's 2020-2021 PD funding for the purpose of providing an additional $500 to the next school year's trustees' PD budget. Trustee Toon, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to start off, there's nothing scientific about this $500. It was came out of hours of boredom on a tractor to bring this forward and discussions that we had at meetings. So I'd start off by asking to consider the amount, and if anyone's, I'd be agreeable to anyone amending the amount. As we discuss and talk about budgets, we know that the first year of a term for a board is always the most expensive as far as training and setting up the new board for success, and being conscious of every dollar that, as we do here at Livingston Range as a board, we can help cement the legacy of this board by providing extra dollars for the subsequent board. Being the year before an election, I think it's crucial with COVID and everything that's going on for us to continue to do as much as possible. We had a huge leadership role in reallocating those dollars this summer to make sure that we could help our staff and our students and support them through the last few months. And so I'd ask that we consider this again to help out the board next year, get off to a good start and have extra funds available to them. And in thinking about this, we know that PD options aren't going to be free, that there still will be dollars available for trustees to use, but in saying that, virtually it isn't as expensive as attending in person. And so we know we'll have less travel expenses in there as well. So I would thank everyone for their consideration on this motion.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Trustee Yeager? And then
I was just going to go on and add on to that. It doesn't look like any of our major, like ASBA or anything else, is going to be anything but virtual this year, which is not going to be very expensive. I think the expense comes in with hotels and travel and things like that. From the indications I've been getting, everything for this current school year will be virtual, so the major things we go to. So I really agree that it's important for the trustees for next year to have it.
thank you. Trustee McKee?
Okay, now this may seem like kind of a strange question, but the unused portion of a trustee's PD at the end of a year, is that just go back into general funds, or is there a carryover for the unused PD portion of a trustee's PD budget?
I believe there's the ability to carry over 1 year, right? Yeah, I'll look it up while you're talking and let you know the actual amount.
Yeah, I just can't remember. I cannot recall. Can anyone recall what the carryover amount is for a trustee in a given year?
We'll wait for Mr. Perry to look it up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Poitras, I saw your hand up.
As a new trustee, it was so beneficial, the original training we did on governance, but also to get us to connect with each other and for me to understand who the other trustees are. And so I think this is such a brilliant idea. I don't know if they'll be able to do it always on election years, the group of trustees that's in there. We're in a unique situation at this time, but I think it's such a great idea. And even if we have all the same trustees or if it's new trustees, it's great at the beginning of a new term to think of your term as a whole and the division and just take a step back and reevaluate, because a lot of things change in a 4-year term. And so all those things that you did at the beginning of your last term are going to be different and refocused at the start of your next term if you're returning. So I think that training is equally as important for returning trustees as it is for new trustees. And preparing for that by making this move is just very proactive, and I think it'll really benefit the trustees of the next term. So I'm really pleased.
Oh, we lost your sound.
I don't know where you lost me, but
Okay.
I think it's great for new trustees and old trustees to kind of reevaluate. And I think it'll just be a wonderful thing to get the next board started on the right foot. So I think it's a great idea, and I'm really glad that Trustee Toon has brought this.
Thank you. Mr. Perry, did you have the information?
I do have the information. So of the 3,500 that's allotted per trustee per year, 2,000 can be carried over 1 year in order to attend an event with higher costs.
Thank you. And that'll only be within the 4-year term. Nothing could be carried over until next year because we're going to potentially have a new board, correct?
Well, I guess if a member wanted to carry some of their funding over and they're on the board next year, it would be allowable, my understanding, but
Okay.
there's no guarantee that you'll be on the board, right? But
Great. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Trustee McKee?
Well, that's an interesting situation, like if you can carry over up to $2,000 and not many people have actually used a lot of their PD funds, saying that you want to take $500 and have that carried over, is that going to eliminate the trustees, if they are reelected, from carrying on their carrying over 2,000, or is that going to be included as part of the $2,000, meaning that they can only carry over 1,500? Like, I'm not sure what the scenario is going to be here.
Go ahead, Mr. Perry.
so the way I read it is that instead of 3,500 available to you, you'd have 3,000 available to you, and of that 3,000, you'd be able to carry over 2,000 if you so chose.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, did you want to close, Trustee Toon?
Nope, thank you.
Okay. Recommendation that the Board of Trustees approve holding $500 from each trustee's 2020-21 PD funding for the purpose of providing an additional $500 the next school year's trustees' PD budget. All in favor? Pass, thank you. Moving on to E5. Woo, there we go. Added item E5, the recommendation that the Board of Trustees send a letter to advocate to the Minister of Education to cancel provincial diploma examinations for the 2020-21 school year due to COVID-19 and address any student entrance inequities into post-secondaries. Trustee Toon has the recommendation on the floor. Did you want to speak to it, please?
Thank you. It was announced yesterday that diploma exams will be optional for the next few months, and that this isn't the first time that this has happened in the province. We have other examples where the province has made them optional, including in Calgary in 2013 during the floods and Fort McMurray during the 2016 wildfires. But in saying that, this doesn't address the inequity that rural students in the majority of the province will face, because most schools aren't on the quarter system, so there wouldn't be any benefit to our rural students. And currently the plan to make that happening for the next 2 months just affects Metro students. So students will be facing the same challenges in the next 2 months as they approach their writing of diploma exams that students have faced the previous 2 months, missing a large chunk of school if they were sick, or the stresses of dealing with life during the pandemic. So I think this would be a huge step for the government to take in this, and allow for all students in the province to have the same benefit, and not just students in the metro area. So I would ask you all to consider supporting this motion to continue the great advocacy work that this board does.
Thank you. Any questions? Comments? Trustee Yeagas?
I have heard parents ask and indicate that they wanted their child to write diploma exams, and some students want to write diploma exams. I think I don't know, I have mixed feelings about this, and that is because they do have quarter exams, like they have in November. A student wants to write, they can, according to what I read. And in January, they will be writing. In March, or yeah, it would probably be March, that they would have probably have another option, maybe, depending on what's happening with COVID. And in June, they will. So from what I'm gathering, what you're asking is that we ask the government not to have diploma exams, period, at all. So what if a student wants to write, or their parents want them to write? What happens then? Or what, I guess I'm of mixed feelings about this, because I'm just of mixed feelings about this, because I know I was a teacher prior to diploma exams, and frankly, I thought it was good when diploma exams came in. It gave another indicator, and not that I felt that my marking or my giving of marks was bad, but I just feel that students should have that opportunity. If they want to write an external exam, they can. So, I don't know, I'm starting to ramble here, so that's my question.
Trustee Thune, did you want to respond to that?
I can, I appreciate the experience Trustee Yig is sharing. I would say that there has been talk in the province about making it optional, and that's what the government previously has done in the announcement yesterday. But the advocacy that's coming out, we've seen letters from other boards, and it was kind of enjoining in their common voice of saying to cancel as opposed to make it optional, because it kind of muddies the water if we're all asking for different separate things as opposed to being more unified in the voice. And I can appreciate the desire of some to do so, but the stressor of doing so is the post-secondary, and I believe the motion addresses that the majority of students that have concern about eligibility for post-secondary. And in the past, when it was addressed during the floods in Fort McMurray, or the wildfires in Fort McMurray, the floods in Calgary, the students that didn't take that weren't prevented from attending post-secondary. There was allowances that were made. So I would just say that this isn't a standardized year. So 2020 has been everything as far away from standardized as possible. So I don't feel that there's a place for this in our education this year.
Thank you. Trustee McKee?
Well, my thoughts are similar to what Trustee Yegas was talking about. Just if you go back a little bit more in history, and when I graduated in 1975, we did not have to write provincial exams. I'm not sure why we did not have to. It's just that we wrote final exams, but not provincial exams. So anyway, I don't know, like you're, if they're optional, I'll just go a little bit further out there. I mean, are you gonna kind of have a two-tier system now where you have some students are going to write their diploma exams and another group that hasn't written their diploma exams? And is that going to affect being accepted at a post-secondary institution? I really don't know. Like I said, I'm kind of not quite sure how to move on this either. Maybe I could ask Mr. Seguin on, have you heard any talk about the cancellation of the diploma exams at the end of this term, like in January? And what about in the 2021 school year?
Mr. Seguin?
All right, I have the correspondence that we received, I think it was yesterday. Yes, and so just to clarify, the correspondence that we received yesterday from government was that the November writing of diploma exams was optional. Right now, they are still looking to have students write diploma exams for the remainder of the year, but they will continue to monitor the situation every writing period and, consider the circumstances at that time.
Thank you, Trustee Yegus.
I guess when I'm thinking about this, I know some of the reasons the diploma exams came in. Now, we're not talking about PATs. I would totally agree if they got rid of the PATs, because I don't think they're of any value. However, the diploma exams are another, and it's not just to get into secondary institutions. Remember, diploma, the marks from this, and they have changed the grading, because remember, it's now 30% and 70% from the one that, for the teacher-based or the school-based mark. But it's also for your awards and things like that, that they use these marks. So there's a lot of factors. And I am going to bring up one area or that a thing that came up prior to diplomas when I was teaching, is that if it's 100% school-based mark, there could be a difference in the marking of teachers. So some students in some schools could be getting really good marks because they want their kids to get really good. And I'm not saying some teachers would do this deliberately, but I think, it can happen. How fair is that? I always thought diploma exams was making the playing field a little bit more equal, and especially now that it's only 30%. And there were times when a student, I would give them a 50, they might have been even failing. I'd give them a 50% and I'd tell them, if you really feel like you could pass this course, then you get more than 50% on the diploma exam and you've got the course. So it was really up to the student to make that decision. I know there's a lot of factors that come in here that I don't think we think about. I think before, as a board, we make a decision of sending a letter like this, we should be asking the students and the parents exactly how they feel about this, because I don't think we can really talk for them just because we as a board make that decision. Now, I haven't heard too much about other boards saying that they want to get rid of these. I know this government has talked about it, but I think it's a question that we really have to look at it and then ask. And do the parents and do the students want it? If they do, then fine. But I would have trouble as a board agreeing with sending a letter at this point regarding those diploma exams.
Any other questions or comments? Trustee Long?
Yeah, I agree with Trustee Yegus. I would like to see them remain optional. And I think this is, again, just supporting that it's something that the students and parents, and I think also teachers should be involved in. So I just as soon leave. I would not want to send the letter. I'd like to see the exam stay optional.
Trustee Burdette?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? But it sounds to me like from what Superintendent Singwin read to us is that their government is kind of playing it by ear. I think as long as they're not going to give one student advantage over another, it depends. If COVID disappears by January, life will be different, right? If it's here for 3 years, it might be the same. And so I'm not sure whether I would support canceling them in the whole province either. I think if they're making it optional, so students who are under stress can opt out if they want to, I think that's probably good enough.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Trustee Toon? Oh,
I'd close if there isn't any.
okay.
other.
Is there anyone else with any comments before Trustee Toon closes? Okay, seeing none, would you like to close?
I appreciate the comments that have been made. I think this is on us to make this type of decision, and I appreciate the wanting to make it optional, but leaving it strictly in the hands of government, I don't think is an option. The wait and see approach isn't how we govern, and I think we're really proactive on things. We sent a letter speaking about rolling move and average before we even had our initial enrollment numbers. So I think that this can be a leadership piece, Edmonton Public, and I think there's 8 or 9 boards already have put out letters on this, and ASBA will have a position on this by the time FGM rolls around. So I think that this is one of those things where if we're going to speak up, we need to speak up now and not wait and see. And it isn't equitable to students that don't have to write it in October or March, or it's optional, and putting them through the stress and their families through the stress of saying that you have to declare that you have stress in it to be eligible to not write it. And that, I think our teachers and the ATA have made lots of public statements saying that they would like the all standardized testing in the province suspended for this year. And I think we can support them in making the statement and sending this letter. It doesn't change what the government's going to do, but we can stand and advocate what's best for our students. And I think we can do that here today if we support this letter. Thank you.
Thank you. I just need just a piece of clarity on the motion, Trustee Toon, and who you asking to do the letter.
It says Education Minister, the second
No,
one.
not to who, but who's going, do you want it coming from advocacy or from the trustees?
Like, who would be proposing the letter?
Traditionally, it's the responsibility of the
From the
board chair. If
Yeah.
the board chair would like to delegate it, I think it's under the board chair's purview to do so and state that.
Okay. And supporting by the trustees naming it, just
Yeah.
for clarity, just for future,
We can say board chair if that the board of trustees through the board chair, if that clarifies it.
okay. Thank you. Any other trustee Toon close? So the recommendation that the Board of Trustees through the board chair send a letter to advocate to the Minister of Education to cancel provincial diploma examinations for the 2020-2021 school year due to COVID-19 and address any student entrance inequities into post-secondaries.
I would ask for a recorded vote, please, Madam Chair.
Okay. All in favor? Sorry, no hand, Lise? Trustee Poitras, sorry, I didn't look over. No hand? Okay, not passed. Thank you. Okay, moving on to E6. Trustee Toon, the recommendation that the Board of Trustees approve Brad Toon running for ASBA Zone 6 Director. Trustee Toon.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to serve this past 2 years on the board of directors, and in doing so, we now have a motion that asks for permission to run for any position that is one board, one vote. So I'm bringing forward this. I'd love the opportunity again to represent Zone 6 in Edmonton, and I think it's crucial that we support the zone and the work that goes on, and it's been an honor to represent Livingston Range on that board, and I'd appreciate the opportunity to do it again. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Trustee Toon? Trustee McKee?
I would certainly like to, I'm not sure what's going to happen here, but I certainly appreciate what you've done in the past. You spent a lot of time and a lot of effort traveling up to Edmonton to sit in on the board of directors there and attend those meetings. So I certainly would like to thank you for that. And myself, if you, so that would be your second term then, right? So you're allowed 2 terms. So this would be your second term. And I guess that if you're on that again, it would be your final term for as being the zone director. Is that correct?
Correct. I served 1 year that was finishing Shannon Sugar's term. So that, and then I served my first 2-year term, and this would be my last 2-year term. And for the majority of the past, I think it's 15 years, a Livingston Range trustee, just for a fun fact, has with Kelly Hall serving in that role as well. We've had more than our share of representation at the provincial level, so appreciate previous board members willing to step up and do that.
Trustee Long?
I support what Trustee McKee just said. I think Trustee Toon is not only dedicated, but more than competent to do this position. I support it.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay. All in favor? Passed. Thank you.
Thank you,
All right.
everyone.
Yeah, you're welcome. Oh, Trustee Higgins?
I'm trying to think of what the policy says, but if anybody runs for office with the ASBA, do they not have to get board approval?
That's what we just asked.
No, I was thinking if you or,
I'm still
You're still
my
part of
position's
it?
not up for running.
okay, and
still
what about,
chair.
I'm sorry, I'm just, and what about
The director and the
labor? Is
No.
he second year?
no.
He's got one more year.
The
Okay,
only one up for election is director and the counterpart.
okay, thank you. That's why I was just wondering about. Thank
Yeah.
you.
We alternate on other years provincially,
Yeah.
so half the board comes in new. So at the provincial level, there's continuity on the board.
All right, moving on to our next item, our discussion and information items. We're on to enrollment update. Mr. Jeff Perry, Associate Superintendent of Business Services, will review the official September 30th, 2020 enrollment figures. Mr. Perry.
I'll probably spend most of the time trying to explain how the sheet works, right? So
Oh, look at it there.
enrollment's getting a lot more complicated, but especially with this year, I tried to put information in here that was valuable to see how our jurisdiction enrollment type has changed from previous years just based on COVID and so forth. So the document that I provide you is not, so I gave you an updated document. It's not much different than the one that you'd had received before, but there were a few small differences, and so I figured I'd give you an updated version of that. So just to explain the sheet a little bit, obviously it's similar to the format that we've received in the past. It gets complicated when you look at FTE versus headcount. FTE typically is taking into consideration the amount of time that the student is enrolled. So for example, an ECS child, kindergarten child, is 0.5 of an FTE, whereas a grades 1 to 12 student would be a full-time. That looks a little different when you consider home education students, and the funding related to home education students is significantly less for a jurisdiction because the obligation for instruction is less there as well. And so they're considered a 0.25 FTE, and so that's taken into consideration as we go through this document. So the second column, which says September 30th, 2020 actual, that is an FTE column. So everything is calculated into the FTE. The next two columns, which are March 30th, 2020, that is what our enrollment projections were back in March of 2020 for the year that we're currently in. And so the next two columns beside that are in yellow, which are just to help give a little bit of context with regards to why there's such a decrease in all of our schools based on the March 30th projected enrollment. And I'll go through this with you shortly, but the last four columns have to do with the prior year. Okay, so it's a measurement against the actual now and the actual in the prior year, and how many at home and home education students we had in the prior year. So let's take A.B. Daly, for example. The actual FTE at the school in A.B. Daly is 168 and a half students, taking into consideration that ECS are 0.5. The projection was 192. And so based on that projection, at school, there's 24 students less than what was projected. If you look at the yellow column, there says 16 at home. So 16 students from AB Daily have chosen to do the at-home learning. 13 have signed up for home education. So if you actually look at the difference between down 24 in the school, up 16 at home, which we get full funding for, up 13 of home education, and you take into consideration that there was one home education student last year, the actual number is up by 4 students in that school. They just look differently. There's 168 and a half in the school, 16 at home, and 13 at home doing home education. Does that make sense to everyone? So if you look at JT Foster, 183 in the school, compared to the budget of 200, there's 17 down, but there's 17 students at home, and there's 2 at home education, so they're pretty much broke even at 2. Now, if you want to compare the prior year, so we typically look at the budget because that's what you take into account when you know the number of students that are moving from one place to another. It looks a little bit different, so there's, when you go through that whole process and you look at the minus 34, which is in the third last column, then you take into account that there's 16 at home and 13 in home education, and 1 home education last year. We're actually down 6 from last year for AB Daily and down 4 from last year for JT Foster. So we're plus 6 from budget or projection and down 10 from last year. Okay. And as we can go through all of those, Stavely is actually up 4.5 from projections, down 2.5 from last year. These numbers aren't in there. These are just my calculations based on those columns. Claire's Home, between the 2 schools, they're down 7 from projection, and they're down 3.5 from the prior year. Granham is down 17.5, so Granham is our biggest decrease in the jurisdiction, and they're down 10 from last year. So they had budgeted to have more students in the school than they had last year, and that did not come to fruition. Fort Macleod schools, altogether, they're down 7, and from budget, and up 3 from the prior year. Pincher Creek is up 15.5 from budget, or from projection, and down 1 from the prior year, even though they look significantly down. So they were a school that had, so Fort Macleod and Pincher Creek had a big take on the at-home learning, and many of them were First Nation students, and we'll see that at the bottom. So these 2 schools were significantly impacted by the option for at-home learning and home education. Livingston is up 7 from projection and up 16.5 from the prior year. So again, it looks different. There's 20 at home learning and 25 at home education. It's always important to understand that when they go to home education, you guys sent a letter to the Minister of Education, because that significantly reduces our funding in the future for students that went to home education and potentially are coming back in the next year. Crow's Nest Pass, up 30.5 altogether from projection, and up 24.5 from last year. I don't know what that was for yet. I don't have the answers to that, but that is what actually occurred. There is 46.5 students that are taking education at home, and 7 that are at home education. So a big take up on home education there as well. If we look at outreaches, so I mean, some of the kids going back into the school can account for the outreach. Outreach West and Outreach North are no longer separate locations. They've been brought into the schools. So altogether, there's been a decrease of 16 students from projection and 24 from last year. Colonies have gone up 15 from projection, and they're up 8 from the prior year. Homeschool students, and again, this is an FTE, because there's actually 107 homeschool students, or home education students. There was 27 last year. So you can see that there's like 80 plus more students taking home education. But as an FTE, that's 26.75, which is 19.25 FTE higher from projection and 20 higher from last year. So you can see that that was an option that many chose to do. Virtual school, we have 13 individuals that are owned entirely on virtual school. At home learning, we have 348 FTE students at home learning. That number was higher initially, but as an FTE, and it is higher when it's not an FTE, but as an FTE, it's 348. International students, we have 5 versus 33 that we planned for. And as an FTE, that means we're 46.75 down from the prior year, and 70 students down from the year before, or 70 students from the prior year, 46.75 from budget. When we look at head count, so that's an FTE. When you look at head count is 3,632 students, which is down by 26 students, so 3,658. If you consider that the majority of those 26 are international students, then we actually have about the same amount of students, but it looks entirely different if you take out international students. Just the FNMI count, we have 179.5 FNMI students. Last year we had 224.50, which means we're down 45 students in the FNMI world. 64 of the 179.5 have chosen to take at home learning. So I guess that's the information I have on enrollment. Is there any questions in relation to that information?
Any questions or comments? Trustee Poitras?
Although our number of students is similar, you said it looks really different. Do you happen to know how many teachers we needed to teach that number of students last year in comparison to how many teachers we are requiring to teach this number of students this year? Or do you not know offhand?
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Siegler.
I'll try to answer very generally because we don't have the exact FTE with us, but we know that even though we have approximately, say, the same number of students, we have hired probably 12, maybe 11 or 12 teachers and some new support staff since last year. So because of the programming options that students have chosen and the additional revenue that we were able to receive from federal funding dollars and the plan that the board had approved and the budget that was submitted in the spring to access reserve, I would say probably up around in that 10 to 12 additional teachers this year compared to last year. And of course, that's not sustainable, but we have the dollars this year with the additional revenue from those sources.
Thank you.
Can I just add to that? The only thing I would add is that the world that we live in is so different than the world that we used to live in, that having additional resources and being able to have those additional supports, teachers and so forth, and not entirely impact schools was pretty important to allow us to adjust to a world that we weren't familiar with. And now, as we go forward, we'll have an understanding of what we can and cannot do based on our realities financially. But we were able to adjust, and at a time when there's lots of stress and lots of uncertainties, it was important to have those additional resources in place.
Thank you guys both so much. I was just wondering, because I know that we have are now offering, we have these students in so many different ways, and I'm really proud of our administration and our administration at the school levels and all of our teachers, because we're still supporting all of these students in such a different world. Like you're saying, Jeff, they're still all here with Livingston Range because, we've gone the extra mile and groundwork we have done before even COVID had happened has made our programs ready to go and exceptional. So it's nice that we still have these students with us and that they've chosen to continue with Living Strange. Those things.
Thank you. Trustee Toon?
Do we have a number of how many students are currently unaccounted for that chose something other than our jurisdiction and we didn't get notification that they went with another trackable option?
So on Jeff's chart there, you can see prior year enrollment, actual and difference, and we're down about 70 students. So there's approximately 70 students that haven't returned, but I couldn't say with certainty that we don't know that they haven't transferred to another school division or moved out of province. We have some information to say that that has occurred with some of our students, but to say how many that we actually haven't heard from when our school principals tried to contact the parents in August and right through, till probably the end of September, different ways to contact them. There are some, for sure, but it probably wouldn't be as high as 70, but I'm sure it's over 20.
Thank you. Oh, Trustee Toon?
Would it be possible to get those numbers closer to the end of the year as time progresses? Those numbers we don't, just for advocacy's sake, because I know that there's a large number in the province. The number I heard floating out there coming from the province itself that isn't 100% confirmed right now is over 40,000 students in the province that aren't traceable, and part of that has been alluded to as discussions that we have here. The growing concerns and problems when new legislation with choice in education has provided huge loopholes. So just for ourselves, as we continue to advocate the province, we want to make sure we're keeping track of all, and the staff does an amazing job, but we can only do what we can on this, and I think the province needs to step up and help with some of these things to find these students and make sure they're taken care of.
Yeah, I would like to have that piece of information too. And some of it may be with the new Choice in Education Act. Perhaps there are parents that are choosing the unfunded, unsupervised home education, for example, and we just don't see them in PASI yet. But we'll work at that and see if we can get you some more information.
Any other questions? I just have one, if nobody else has any. I just wondered, because of the fluctuation between the at-home learning and our in-school students, we sent a letter out to our parents. When was the cutoff for them to make a decision? And I know that this paper right here is now tied to our funding, but I just wondered how much of a difference, if we know, if there's any more fluctuation between the at-home and the in-school learning.
Yeah, we had left our choice with parents open. We did say back in August when we conducted the survey that we're going to leave it open for now, but if we do need to have a longer term commitment, we would let you know. And so on October 2nd, we did send a letter home to all parents, except for the home education parents. When they chose that option, then that was their choice for the year. Yes. And the funding for that, of course, as you know, is significantly different than if it is a program that is instructed and assessed by a teacher, whether that's at home or in person. So we sent that letter home on October 2nd saying we need a longer term commitment because we have more and more fluctuations, students moving back and forth, and logistically it was turning into a really complex thing to try and manage. And you're always, if you allow that to carry on and you have large fluctuations from one week to another, you could be looking at combining a class or a couple of classes in a school to free up the teacher, because we don't have any more resources to hire additional teachers, right? So we would have to use the existing staff that we've got. And so you can imagine how difficult it would be to combine a class and then 2 weeks later, because parents want to have their children go back in person, then to uncombine. And and to make all those accommodations and be totally flexible and changing and very fluid. So we did ask them to decide by this Friday, October 16th, whatever program they are in as of this Friday. That would be their choice for the remaining, I think there's 61 student days left until the end of January. And so in January, we will survey them again and see what their choice is going forward.
Thank you. Mr. Perry?
I just wanted to add one more thing that I neglected to add when I was talking. When you look at the bottom line and it talks about 179.5 FTE for First Nation students, our funding for First Nation students is still based on the number of students we have at the school. Our funding for Alberta Education won't change. They told us in the spring what it was going to be, and it is here. You know, or we get it, whatever that was. But First Nation students, the fact that we're down 45 students means we're down funding for this year. So that's something that we're monitoring going forward, considering, you know, the number of students and the tuition rate or whatever. It's significant dollars that we have to be prepared to not have. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Perry. Moving on to our regional school council, Trustee Poitras will provide the board with an update regarding the regional school council. Trustee Poitras?
Can you hear me?
Oh, now we can, yeah.
Okay, sorry. So we have our regional council coming up on Tuesday, and for any of you who have meetings that you can let the council know, please do. We have sent out invites to all of the chairs and principals, although I know some of the chairs are switching over or have been switched over. So this is a really key meeting for our school councils because we're going over how to host a Google school meeting, and then also we're going to have Mr. Kuzak there talking about running a school council Facebook page or Instagram, any of that social media, and what that entails, what's appropriate to put on there, what's inappropriate to put on there, who should be posting on there. And it can be really beneficial for not only the chairs, but the vice chairs or anyone else who sits on the board. So that is coming up on Tuesday the 20th, and it will be a virtual meeting. So we hope that all of you can make it and encourage all of your school councils to be there as well. Sorry, Claire, do you have your hand up?
Nope.
Okay. Does anyone have any other questions?
Nope, doesn't look like anybody.
Okay. Then yeah, we just ask that you encourage everyone to be there, and hopefully we can see you guys as well. It's going to be a great meeting.
Thank you, Trustee Poitras. Moving on to Art Gala, Trustee Toon will give an update regarding the upcoming Art Gala.
I don't know how this was delegated from the awards chair, committee chair. Now my name ended up on the agenda, but I'm grateful to walk into our central office today and see the art hanging on the wall. It's been a long, stark summer with bare walls, so it's such a welcoming, inviting thing to see the student artwork back up. We appreciate the hard work that our teachers do in getting it made and put up and curated, and things are going to look a little bit different this year. We're not going to be able to host an in-person event, which is unfortunate, but we still want to try and make things special for the students and our award winners. So at our meeting last week of the Art Awards Committee, we discussed we will be making a video to highlight the pieces and send it out to the schools for them to share, and each school will be giving the awards to the students and then taking photos so we can share that on our websites and social media throughout the division. So really, again, want to thank the staff for the hours that get put in to make this a special thing and we want to continue it going forward, but it's unfortunately due to circumstances that are gonna look a little different this year.
Thank you. Any questions? Perfect. All right, moving on to F4, transportation. Phil McGill transportation coordinator, will provide the board with an update on the LRSD Transportation Department. Welcome. Yeah, come right on up. We have to mic you up. I don't know if it is or not. Is it on? Oh. Okay,
Okay, how's that for sound?
that's better, thank you.
Okay. Currently, our fleet is made up of 85 buses. The 5 oldest buses are on the block for being replaced this year. 2 of those are 99s, 2 are 01s, and 1 02. We do have one 2000 year old, or a year 2000 bus, but the driver of that one has threatened me with my life if I take it away from her, because it has a standard transmission which she prefers. So that one will stay on our fleet for at least another couple of years, and it is running in top shape. These other 5 are getting quite old and tired, so they're going to be replaced this year. We have a deal working on 5 2018s to replace those ones, so that should come about by the middle of December, I've been told. Okay. Right now, we're transporting approximately 1,600 students on 47 routes. We have been asked to provide a possible 48th route in the past for several special needs transportation requests, so we're looking at that and reviewing that between myself and Christy, my assistant. So once we get it determined who will actually need to be riding, we'll organize that 48th route possibly. We still got to get the logistics worked out on that one. Okay. Over the summer, we had 8 of our drivers resign, 2 of which cited COVID protocols as a determining factor in their resignation. One of those 2 was Keith Trowbridge, who, by the way, resigned with 52 years of driving service with us. So we've put out a special recognition to him, and hopefully we can augment that with some more recognition before the year is out. 2 of those 8 drivers moved out of province, and 4 of those drivers received full-time employment opportunities that they chose to take. That made a bit of a challenge, but not overly just yet. We had enough spare drivers in each of those locations to replace each of those drivers except one, which was Keith here in Fort Macleod. And so we were able to blend his route into 2 others, and we went from 7 to 6 routes in Fort Macleod. Okay. Now, having talked about drivers and resignations and such, with the recent changes from the Alberta government for driver training, we will be facing a shortage of drivers quite likely next summer, with several of our drivers reaching the age where they're very seriously thinking of resigning. So we've started a driver recruitment program, and Christie's to be accoladed for this. She's organized some, between her and Carly, videoing a bunch of our drivers so that we can put together an information video and go around the division and have some town hall information meetings that we can hopefully get people interested in becoming school bus drivers, and initially working on our spare list, and then hopefully have a group of people that we can rely on for when our regular route drivers do start to resign in the next year or two. Okay. That's scheduled to take place over the next few months. Our goal is to have those meetings completed by the end of January, February, so that we can hopefully have a group of people to put through training to get their Class 2 license with an S endorsement, which is what's required for driving now. So that's in the works, and that will be coupled with these town hall type meetings and radio and newspaper ads and word of mouth encouragement from drivers, and possibly some cold calling to bus route families to see if there's anyone interested. Someone that's a farmer rancher could work this into their schedule, or stay-at-home moms that want to do something in between breakfast and home time for kids coming home from school. So that's our intentions. Okay. With COVID shutting everything down in March, we decided in April that we would schedule all our buses to go through our own bus shop in Pincher Creek, which we accomplished through the course of those 5 or 6 months. And so all of our buses were CVIP safety inspections done by our own mechanics, and the repairs that were needed from all of those inspections were completed, and that gave us an opportunity to generate a substantial cost reduction in our repair costs and such. And as a result, we've shown a substantial what do you call it, savings. There's another word to use. What is it? Sorry? No, oh, I can't think of the term just now. But anyway, we're in the black instead of in the red, which is something that hasn't happened for several years in the transportation department. So we're very, very pleased with the work that our 2 mechanics are doing in our shop, and the work that they've done to bring our fleet up to their standards that they're following in their shop. Okay. Startup for this year was a little bit challenging because of the COVID protocols and what have you, but after a month and a half of time, we've got it smoothed out to where all the drivers are comfortable with sanitizing their buses after each run. So morning and evening, they go through with a pressurized pump sprayer, and it mists the disinfectant that they can spray onto the seats. So, and we did a little bit of research, found a disinfectant that is essential oil based, uses oil of oregano, oil of oh, it just slipped my mind. 3 essential oils in it, so it's very hypoallergenic. It sprays as a mist, and does not have to be wiped off like a cleaner like Spray 9 would need to be sprayed on. Wait a few minutes, go back and wipe everything down. This one can just dry, and within 10 minutes it's dry and good to go again. So it's working quite well. The only drawback is quite a few of our spray bottles have broke down with the extended use that they're getting. So we're looking at replacements for those, and possibly looking at getting some cordless battery operated foggers that apparently use the product a lot more efficiently, spreads it out more efficiently than these pump bottles do. Okay. And to date, we've only had 3 bus families that have returned to in-class learning rather than staying at home. So we've been able to accommodate those families on the required buses that they ride on without having to do anything extra for seating and whatnot. Okay. So any questions then on transportation? I know I've probably missed something, but.
Any questions? Yeah, sure. Trustee McKee?
You know, this may seem like a strange question, but did you put up like glass, sort of plexiglass to protect the drivers, or are kids required to wear masks now? Like, what's the protocol that
Yeah.
that you have in place now?
When that suggestion was made, we looked at the logistics of and cost of doing that kind of thing and opted not to do that. The majority of divisions across the province went that direction too, and so we've required all drivers to wear masks. And so all students except for kindergarten to grade 3, those are the optional ones, but grade 4 to 12, all kids wear their masks on the buses as well. Okay.
Any other questions? Great, thank you so much for bringing us the update. Yeah,
All right, thank
thank you. All right, everyone, moving on to our accountability pillar presentation and enhanced learning model. Mr. Chad Kuzik, Associate Superintendent, Curriculum and Innovation, will present the accountability pillar to the Board of Trustees, along with Corey.
No, actually, correction, it's Sean Lougheed.
Oh, Sean Lougheed, okay, from Wolf Creek still?
Yes.
Okay.
Wolf Creek.
School Division will provide an update on the enhanced learning model, a partnership between Wolf Creek School Division and Livingston Range School Division. I'll turn it over to you guys. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Sean, the thumbs up if you can hear us. Well, he's got a fish, so I assume that's his thumbs up. So. If you can present mine now, if it's okay. Oh, thank you. Nikki, if you can present mine. Yeah, so I'm going to start off giving you a brief overview of the information I have thus far. This information is from May 2020, but it still gives us valuable information on where we're at currently. Any updates that do come, I'll make sure I pass it along to the board, and also at a different time potentially have a detailed analysis of each school and where they're at in parts of these in this process. Next slide. So as you can see right now, that is the general survey results and those that we could get data for to be able to provide us some information. So as you can see, there's a lot of NA that's there, and that's the PAT and diploma, and some of the other measurables that are more difficult to get. Through that, though, as you'll notice, we did get some results in January that Sean's going to assist us with to be able to demonstrate some of the stuff that's taking place with Rock to Diploma and how we did on that. So first, as you notice right now, you can see a lot of blue, green, and Jeff is leaving again. So that's one thing to notice. And we have a lot of things to kind of talk about really briefly. The safe and caring, we can see it's very high once again. And program of studies, you can see there's improvements in those. Some of the things that I'll discuss in a moment, or right now, is the high school completion rate at 3 years. I'm digging into that. Our 5-year rate of completion is close to divisional/provincial levels. So I'm looking at what happened, particularly with some of our kids that may take more time. I know that question will come up, and we're looking into seeing how many of those kids just needed that 4th year to get the credits they needed to graduate. But we're still at intermediate, and we're still doing okay there. The other one was the 4+ exams, diploma exams. I'm looking for clarification from the province on that right now. When I looked at the raw data, some of the students I felt should be included in that weren't. which includes some of our 4th and 5th year students. If they write diplomas, they're not, what my understanding is, and Sean can correct me too, that they may not be counted in that writing more than 3 diplomas. So I'm going to get more clarification on that and bring that one back to the board. Another thing I wanted to highlight on this sheet is the continuous improvement part. It's improved significantly and down to excellent. Another one I'd like to actually, I skipped over is dropout rate. Do you remember last year's data? No, at high. So there was a good turnaround with that, and very proud of all the work everyone's done to make that happen. So if we flip to the next slide, you kind of get an idea of what we're talking about. We improved in safe and caring, programs of studies, education quality, work prep, citizenship, parental involvement, which is already high, we maintained, and then we improved significantly in school improvement. Those are all from surveys, and those surveys came from pre-COVID. So just to clarify that. The objective measures, dropout rate improved, and then we have, as I spoke of, the 3-year completion rate declined, looking into that. Participation rate, again, I'm looking at that, but it maintained. So we're still relatively where we were last year. And same as the transition rate. Let's speak to that one now. These are kids that go to post-secondary after high school. And my question is, if they go to this, the States or another province, they're not recorded. So we're going to start looking at ways, when I do my career practitioner presentations, talking about ways that we can track that to get a clearer understanding of how many kids are transitioning to post-secondary. So next slide there. So on work prep, as you can see overall, we're very close to the province. And we saw a significant increase with the parents' opinion of the situation and even the teachers. So we had a pretty healthy increase in that this year, year over year. Next one. The following slide in citizenship, again, we've done well again, and we're actually above the provincial average and outperforming the province in this regard in this particular survey. And we see, again, significant increases throughout, or at least a little bit of increase, especially in that student one. I like to see that when we get a solid 4% increase on that. But again, we're overall above the provincial average. Next one. Program of studies is something we've worked on very hard, being a rural school, being able to offer all those wonderful programming. We saw a significant, again, or an increase anyways, creeping up close to that provincial average every year over year. A lot of work, dedication, resources have been applied to a number of things, including academies, virtual schools, dual credit, things that provide different alternative ways for students and different levels of programming for our kids. And again, I'd like to see that significant increase in that student category once again. So that was good to see. And the next one, so the students feel like they have choice. Education quality, something again we should be very proud of, that we're very close to provincial average once again. And we saw significant increases with the parents and the students once again, to be able to say they're seeing some of that education quality taking place in their school based on their survey. Parental involvement for us, which has traditionally been fairly high. Again, once again, we're very close to that provincial average. And again, we saw pretty much similar to what we had last year. Like I said, it maintained, but again, year over year, we're getting at that 80 level, which is very good to see. So yeah, next one, I think that's the last one. I kind of ran through that very quick. Nikki, do you mind going up to the very first slide again? I didn't want to skip over this pieces and the next one there. Again, we're seeing a lot of green, blue, and in yellow is good too, especially in the maintain area. A lot of things that we use this again for a 3-year plan and working towards that. While I introduce Sean and kind of explain what happened, we looked at our diploma results, and I think I've shared a little bit of what I got in January. We took the ones in January and said, okay, academically, how did we do? Was there an increase? Is there stuff that's going on? We brought the enhanced learning model in, and Sean and Corey was another person's involved, and the enhanced learning model and rocked the diploma. And I sat there on the weekends with these kids and wondered, how could you not do better by attending this? It was a wonderful experience for these kids, and I think I shared some of the stuff that the kids had said about it and what it meant to them. And so we were anxiously waiting for the diploma results, which Sean will share just briefly. But we're in one of those situations I'm almost disappointed I didn't see the results on here. especially for parents in the community, because I think you would have seen an increase based on my calculations. So having said that, I'm hopeful that Sean can explain this much better than I can, in the audio and video and everything works. And I'm going to let him describe with his presentation as he dug deep into the kids who attended Rock to Diploma versus kids that did not, and saw those improvements that we did see in the majority of the diplomas in which we wrote. Remember that we didn't write the June ones, so this is just a one-shot look at what happened, just a snapshot, but he's done a good job comparing apples to apples as best he could. So, Sean, they're all yours now.
All right, you bet. Thanks so much. Can you hear me clearly there, Chad?
I gave you a 7 out of 10, so it's pretty good.
What was that?
Yes, you're good, Sean, you're good.
Okay, good. You guys are a little bit muffled, so we may have to stop if you have a few questions there. So I'm going to share my screen here.
Go ahead, Sean, it should work now.
Okay. Now, can you all see my screen there?
We just see you, Sean.
Oh, just me? You're not seeing my screen?
Not yet, no.
Okay, let's see. Hopefully it's going to come in here. Let's try this.
We're good to go, Sean. Yeah, we got you.
Perfect. Good. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. I can only see my presentation, so I can't kind of see you. So please just speak up and stop me if you want to go through a few things. It is my pleasure to be able to speak with you guys today and walk you through some of your results. It's quite exciting when I'm looking at these results and seeing that, because it's exciting because we're doing great things for kids. And working with Chad and Livingston Range has been a real pleasure doing this. And Chad's done a great job of working with the schools and taking what we've done and bringing it to your school division and getting results even faster than we did. It's been a period for us, and it has been growth over years. And we're really seeing some amazing things happening now, and you guys are on a fast track to do that as well. So I'm excited to share this with you. So a little bit, and just preemptive work for this with us, we were in a very similar place. When you look back at 2014, 2015, we had lots of those fall colors that we don't like seeing. And the sad part is, again, the AERR this year doesn't have our results, because I see yellow when I'm looking at our P18 diploma, and we were all the way up to green this year in my own calculations and figuring those pieces. So I'm a little disheartened that I don't have the colors this year, because we would have been all the way to the spring colors. So it has been growth over time, and you guys are going to see the same growth as I walk through this and show you. And when we originally started, one of the things I wanted to show Chad and Daryl when we were talking about this was a direct comparison, having good groups of kids to be able to compare what effect is this having. And of course, our board, like you, is saying we're going to put money into this, but we need to see the evidence. And to me, really, the proof is in the pudding, taking a look at that. And when I show things like this, comparing RTD students to students that did not attend, it's been dramatic for us. It has not been a percent or two. It has been quite dramatic, and it has changed the culture of our school division over the past 5 years, where we had over 700 students attending Rock the Diploma last year, prior to COVID, between our 2 ones there. But even prior to COVID, we had 500 kids attend in January. And so those kind of numbers are starting to change the culture and opportunities for our kids. So I also know that Chad has shared some of this with you. This is from one of the sessions combined with your students and our students. These are the kind of results that we've seen just from kids in a qualitative feedback mechanism. And when we're seeing, I'm going to show you lots of numbers, but we also want to put a face to this and hear directly from the kids. And I've got pages and pages of this. And so my own children are in the system going through this, and we want to do this for all of our kids. And really the feedback from parents has been tremendous. And we're looking at bang for buck. This truly has been an amazing opportunity that we've been able to create for kids. So we're going to get right into your guys' data here. So the way I'm going to go through is I'm going to go through all of your different subjects that you guys participated in, and I'm going to walk you through a couple of different categories. So the first one is taking a look at the number of writers. So in the case of Biology 30, you had 87% of your kids signed up for it. However, 74 ended up actually showing up on the day. And as we mark attendance and things there. And so that's quite good, actually. That's quite high. That's much higher than our first year doing some of those. The interesting piece when you're taking a look there, because it does influence how we're going to walk through the data here on the number of students participating. So some of the things you're going to see here, first of all, is this area that I've just highlighted here. Those areas, when you're taking a look at this first column, is RTD students, students that attended Rock the Diploma, compared to other Livingston Range students who did not. And the direct difference there, you're looking at a 17% difference, percentile difference in the standard of acceptable. And in the level of excellence, again, you're looking at a 15% increase. So that's dramatic when we're taking a look there. And so kids that attended Rock the Diploma were within 1% of acceptable with the province and 3% just off the level of excellence. So dramatic increases there. So it's always important to take a look at all your students, but also breaking them down and seeing what impact is that having. And as you start seeing more, what we've seen is the more students attending, when we're getting 94, 95% of students attending, it's having such a tremendous impact on our results. So with that same group in Bio 30, it's also important for us to take a look at not just acceptable and excellence, but how did kids actually do percentile on the exam? And so when you're looking here, you'll see that 70.3% was the average for RTD students. And students that did not attend were 59.5. So that, again, is quite a big discrepancy in terms of the achievement level on that. And out of that, you had 32% of your students, 8 actual students that achieved 80% or higher. Those kids attended Rock the Diploma. Whereas the students that did not attend, only 1 achieved a level of 80%. So, and kind of that last piece that's always looming in there is that gap analysis. Now, I'm going to let you know right now, every single subject that you had students attending Rock the Diploma, students that were there at Rock the Diploma, their gap was smaller. And in most cases, smaller than the province, but it was smaller than students who did not attend. And that's important because we know that our teachers are doing great jobs. But however, often they drop, we see the average drop when they're going into their diploma exam or after they've written it. But how do we close that gap so that their class mark and their diploma mark are almost identical? And that really is Rock the Diploma getting it down to that point. So in this case, you had a 6.2% of that gap between the class mark and the diploma, whereas the province was 7%. So you were 8.8% below the province taking a look at RTD students. So that's a very, very important factor there. So great stuff in bio. So let's take a look at Math 30-1. This one always has a high number of students that sign up for it. You guys had 95% of students signing up, 73% attended. And so we had a nice grouping there of 30 kids. And again, this is where we often see some pretty dramatic results. You're seeing a 22% difference between students that attended and students that did not in terms of their level of performance and the standard of acceptance. And then, of course, for level of excellence, 10% higher when you're taking a look here. And so, again, the students that attended RTD are right at that same level of the province there. And in excellence, students that attended Rock the Diploma outperformed the province by 3%. So those are huge factors right there for you. And then again, when we go and take a look at the actual percentile difference on their exam, again, 67% compared to 57%. So quite a bit higher on the actual exam itself. 37% of kids achieved 80% or higher. The other interesting piece is taking a look at seeing how many students achieve at that highest most level, that above 90. You guys actually had 6 students that attended Rock the Diploma that actually got 90, and one of your students was 1 question off getting 100% on the Math 30-1. And that is an absolutely incredible feat to be able to do that on Math 30-1. So Math 30-2, and especially when I talk with Chad about this one, this is a very interesting group and a very important group to go through because you're going to have a direct comparison between half your kids attended and half your kids didn't. And so you really have an equal match here. So it's going to be a very important one for us to go through. So the other thing here as well is taking a look to say, well, maybe only the highest performing kids attended Rock the Diploma. Even prior to that, what was their school mark? So we're going to talk about that. So with Rock the Diploma in this case, you had 64.7 on the exam and 55.9 for students that did not attend, significantly higher. Your level of standard of acceptable was interesting because it was only 3% higher, but your excellence was 26% higher for kids that attended. So that's pretty dramatic when we're taking a look here, from 33% compared to 7% that students didn't. And your RTD students, compared to the province, outperformed it dramatically. Those are huge results when we're taking a look there of how much higher that they're achieving. So that 15%, pretty significant. So let's take a look and see. So those kids that attended Rock the Diploma, were they only the high flying kids that actually attended? No. This is their average school mark. Your kids that attended Rock the Diploma and that didn't, the kids that attended are in blue. The kids that are in red are the kids that did not attend. Their average was very, very close, just around that 1.4% mark. So their class mark was very, very similar. And both of them were slightly below the province. Then they wrote their exam. So when we take a look next, what happened? If they were pretty even going in, look at the difference between your RTD kids and your kids that did not attend. The RTD kids barely dropped. Your kids that didn't attend dropped significantly, and your provincial kids even dropped quite a bit as well. So when we take a look at that gap with evenly based kids that took Rock the Diploma only dropped by 3.9%. Kids that didn't, 11.1% drop in their grade. And the province even expects that, and they had a 6.6% drop. So this is a really, really important one to take a look at to say, apples to apples, what difference is this making? And as you can see, it's really made quite a bit of a difference for your kids. So social, yep. Did I hear a question?
No, we're okay. Go ahead, Sean.
You bet. So hopefully I'm not going too fast here. So just trying to keep within your guys' time as well and not keep you too long. So social 30-1, again, great number of writers here. 79% signed up, 68% attended. Social studies, for some reason, it's interesting. Your guys, the number of kids that sign up in social studies in Livingston Range and in Wolf Creek, they're probably our lowest attending one, still in the 70s, mid to high 70s, but it's lower than other subjects, which is interesting. So it's interesting seeing that same trend between two school divisions. So results here as well, when we're taking a look. Level of acceptable, 90% of your kids that attended Rock the Diploma got in the standard of acceptable, and 10% in the standard of excellent, compared to 79% and 4% for kids that did not attend. And you outperform the province when you're looking at your RTD kids. So those are huge factors to take a look at there. And then again, we go to how did they actually achieve on the exam itself. And again, outperforming on the actual exam itself. And the excellence level was interesting to see, with 10% of the kids being in that higher range. And social 30-2, again, this is an interesting one because you had 44% of students signing up, 23% or 14 students attended. But again, here we see that dramatic difference of 92% level of acceptable, 8% excellence, compared to 77 and 2%. So again, we're seeing that trend no matter what exam we're going into, we're seeing that trend. And again, those students, outperforming the province by 11%, that's pretty dramatic when we're taking a look at performance there. And again, a 5.4% increase on the actual exam itself. And then in the gap analysis, taking a look, again, where are those kids at? And we're seeing that same thing that we saw in the Math 30-2. The students attending, very close in terms of percentage, just below the province, and then what happens when they write. The students that attend Rock the Diploma only drop a small amount, they drop 2.7%, whereas it was a 6.9% for non-RTD students, and then the province at 5.4%. So narrowing that gap to as small as it can be, just tremendous work there, and great work by the kids. And so there's a very, very quick rundown for you on this. I'll just stop sharing my screen.
Does anybody have any? Sorry,
really
Sean.
enjoyable to actually go through your students' data and take a look there and seeing the impact that it's having and taking a look at the number of kids and the hundreds of kids that this impacts. And over the past 5 or 6 years that we've seen it, it's been thousands of kids. And we've had thousands of kids giving us feedback that we must continue this. And for the price that we're paying for that, the amount of impact, no other initiative has had an impact on our diploma results to the same extent that this has. The enhanced learning model and Rock the Diploma compared to anything else we've done in the past 5 years. So just dramatic results, and I love to see that that's starting to be transferred, and your kids are getting that same result as well.
Thank you, Sean. I want to do a clap, but I won't do that right now. That was pretty impressive to go through that much data and that much time. A couple things I want to touch on before I open up to questions. The one is the dash twos. Corey and I and Sean talked about our 30 dash twos, and I was looking at those kids that may have not have passed if they weren't at Rock the Diploma, and there were significant numbers in that too. That's going to speak to our graduation rates, especially social 30-2, because that's one of the courses that often our students that drop out or don't graduate in 3, 4, 5 years is they're missing that social studies. So it was interesting that, again, it was one of the lower ones to get kids to. So going forward, our strategy with that. So yeah, there's a couple of things we looked at, and those kids at different levels, how much of an impact did it make in their lives by spending a weekend with us? And yeah, it was significant in pretty much every one of the situations we looked at. So at this time, I'll open up for any questions for Sean, and I'll try to relay it to him, if possible, if you can't hear us.
Any questions? Go ahead, Mr. McKee.
Well, it's quite evident, that the results speak for themselves. Like, it's just incredible that you can spend a weekend, just reviewing concepts, and it makes such a big difference in your writing results on the departmentals. One question I have though, like, what does it cost for a student to attend these a Rock the Diploma weekend sessions?
I don't mind answering that one. The division and the board has provided that to the students for free. Yeah, we bus them there, we feed them. We follow the model Wolf Creek did, and it was part of the enhanced learning model. These go in connection too, by the way, that the enhanced learning model is there to support the students as well if they choose to, or teachers that choose to. But another thing that I thought was interesting too, to kind of what you'd mentioned that triggered my thought, is that if you look at the kids that when we were measuring what they would have had in class or class mark, and they went to the Rock Diploma, it was about the same, it kind of tells me there's a lot of good things that were happening in the classroom. Just needed a little more, polish here to get them ready for that test, right? And so I mean, it was significant, right? Like you could see that those that attended did, but and those times what they did, they were close to their actual mark, which was good, especially in the dash twos. So.
And just one more thing, the survey of the students on the knowledge that their instructors had, I think it was at like 100% approval rate. So that's impressive as well. Like, you're getting very good instructors who are partaking in those courses.
It was fun to be there and be a part of it. They were mostly from I think they're all from Southern Alberta. And so they understood our context and could relate to the kids and build relationships in that short amount of time. And it was important to have pizza too. And you've seen that was key as well to in that short amount of time to be able to have the energy to get through it, for sure. Because these are long days too. And it's the students. I mean, they were wonderful to come. They started at like 9, I think it was. Sometimes we didn't leave till 5. There was weather issues one day. There was a bunch of variety of reasons for them not to show up, hockey and things of that nature, and that's all perfectly fine. But the ones that did come, they made the most of it, for sure.
Awesome, thanks. I just have a quick question. And I know it depends on what's happening with COVID and the diplomas this year. Do we see this going forward for this year too, if at all possible?
I hope so. And Sean, I don't know, I'll relay that to you again. We're going to follow Wolf Creek on this one. Yes, we have a plan for a virtual session. Okay. And maybe we can connect more kids, and it may be as effective or it may not, but we want to provide that opportunity to be able to see if we can continue this. If they make it optional though for the January, right, because I know Wolf Creek, I believe you canceled your November Rock to Diploma, correct, Sean?
Well, what we've done is we're actually gathering information right now to see how many kids are going to be writing, and then we're working with Rock the Diploma to see what if we have groups of kids to provide some potential on-demand supports, or if there's a great enough number of kids, they would still run sessions for us if we had the number of kids. So the company we work with is just tremendous, and like you've seen, great instructors, great people to work with across the board. And the resources just continue to get better and better and more opportunities for kids. So even during this time, we had planned for full virtual sessions live. So they're not videotaped, it's live. So kids are in small classes working with a teacher and also having access to on-demand content. So that is our hope for January. But again, we'll have to wait and see. But the nice thing here is that if we have kids writing, then we should be able to be providing some supports, hopefully.
Awesome, thanks. Sure wish I had this when I was going to school. Trustee Long?
So a question for both of you. How do you promote this to our students? And specifically, do our seniors get to see these stats?
Yes. Well, I'll start with what we did. I basically got Corey and I spoke with every kid potentially we could. We went to every school, tried to talk to every kid whenever chance we got in a certain presentation to say, hey, this is what's going on. These stats were part of that from Wolf Creek stuff. Now we can share our own when we go about doing this. With COVID, it's going to change a bit. We're going to have to get creative how we do this. I think one strategy will bring Sean in to be able to provide this details to our administrators. And then working with Corey. Corey's the other person that we work with, by the way. He wasn't here today, but he's a person, he comes down, he works with, specifically with us to promote this, work with kids, talk about enhanced learning model. He's there for support. And so that's part of it. So we promoted it by talking to every high school teacher about enhanced learning model. And we talked to as many high school teachers as we could about Rock to Diploma. We put posters out. We talked to every kid whenever we could, had little sessions either at lunch or in flex time to say, hey, this is here for you, you can come. And then we just went, and then when there wasn't, we sent an email out to all kids too. I forgot that. So all division emails saying, hey, this is available to you. Just so you know, just click yes, and we'll get you registered, and away we go. As you saw, we had good registration. I think that's great. But some of the courses, like we had 40% come for that Social 30-2, for example. That happens, like the stuff that's come up, right? That they said, well, it was free, I signed up for it. And then like, oh, I've got volleyball, basketball, something like that. And that took priority over some of the students. And I understand that, I really do. But the more this grows, and what I understand is we did pretty good for our first year, and it looks good for our second year. Sean, would you agree with that? For our first year, we had pretty good uptake?
100%. For us, the tipping point, when I had a school that was very, very involved in our very first round, and some schools that were kind of, our results were okay in terms of the number of kids attending. When I actually brought all of the principals into a meeting and I put the results on the table, the school that participated outperformed every school dramatically, between 15 and 38% difference between some different schools. And so side by side, when they saw that, it changed the landscape. Principals now literally go into classrooms and say, pull out your Chromebooks, you're all signing up. They are phoning parents and trying to make arrangements. That's why we're trying to take away any obstacle for kids by having buses, picking kids up, providing food, so that it is not only kids that are able to afford it, but all of our kids. And what's interesting is it gets to a point when so many kids come. One of the most heartening things I've ever heard was when a kid, he's walking in the door to Rock the Diploma. I said, hey, you look like you're not too happy. He goes, well, there's supposed to be a party, but everybody's here at Rock the Diploma, so I thought I might as well come as well. When it changes the culture to that level where everybody is now coming, it's really neat to see. And when I'm seeing 98% of kids registered in a course attending a Rock the Diploma session, that's amazing to me, and that's shifting culture. It takes time, but when that happens, it's just tremendous. So I have a very tough time now, even doing comparisons between Rock the Diploma kids and not, because for us, 98% of kids are coming. It's just everybody's coming. So now we just compare results.
Trustee Poitras?
I was just going to say, when you first introduce us to a school and you know, it's new to our division, do you find that it is the overachievers or kids who are already at that higher grade level, achieving those higher percentages, who are more keen to take the diploma, rock the diploma, or do you find that you get all types of students in those first few years? I assume as it goes on and you do have teachers being like, everyone's signing up, I'm phoning your parents, like, we're making this happen, that you're getting a lot more of those students. But when you're seeing these initial results, is it the 80 and 90 students who are taking it and then achieving a little bit higher? Or are you finding, you know, some of those students who struggle a bit more to get those grades are signing up and also having success?
Great question. And actually, what's very interesting is I actually looked at your guys' data in terms of that same trend, and it's almost identical to ours. You actually have, it's a double bell curve where your high achievers, I would say probably that 75 to 95 kid, but also your 35 to about 60% kid. The ones who are in fear of failing, that kind of thing, they want to get there because that's going to get them over the hump. And same with our kids who are high achievers to get to that next level. And they don't want their marks dropping. So you see that at first. What's interesting though is over time that middle group starts growing. But what's interesting is it almost moves every single group a standard deviation. So kids who generally would have failed in the past are passing. Kids who were just passing are achieving higher grades. Kids that are in the middle are now getting level of excellence, and excellent kids are getting that upper level, that 90% plus level. So it's really interesting watching that over time, and seeing where you guys are at is exactly where I would say probably we were probably for our first. I would say probably our year 2 and year 3. You guys are already in year 2 from our year 1, so you guys are a year ahead for sure. And in a couple of math is a perfect example. Math 30-1. Your rates are that high because kids tend to be very worried in Math 30-1 and 30-2, and they attend. So those numbers are always higher. But your actual attendance in this first round was very high comparatively, even working in other school divisions. And I really attribute that to, you know, Chad was very asked, how did you guys get the most out of this? And with schools, talking to administrators, talking to kids, getting in classrooms, and really making them understand this impact. And your kids, great results so far.
Awesome, thanks. Any other questions? Great, thanks so much for attending today, Sean.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Thank you, Sean.
You bet. Have a great day.
You too. Next on our agenda is our audit committee, but I think we're just going to let our Education and Ministry Youth Council, Mr. Nick Housengate, go next, since he's sitting at the back of the room. He is going to present to the Board of Trustees regarding the first council meeting held on October 2nd to 5th, 2020. So come on up, Nick. Yep, Nikki will get you mic'd up.
Would you rather sit with the mic or?
I'll sit with it.
First off, I want to say congratulations again for being chosen to go on the Ministry Youth Council for a second time.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so as you said, this is my second year on the council. So this year it's a whole new group of people, plus about 5 returning members. And then we just kind of act as guides as well as participants to some of the other members. So we gather 3 times a year. Usually we would gather in Edmonton, but we're doing it on Zoom for the most recent meeting and for meetings so far that are scheduled. We'll see about the next 2. We have one in February and one in May. We're not totally sure whether they'll be in person or not. So basically how it works is each meeting is a set of 4 days, usually on a long weekend. And for the first 3 days, we attend different sessions around like policy, different like things that they're planning to implement in the education system. This time around, we had a session on mental health in schools. Last time they were testing out a course on financial literacy to like implement into COM. So it's like a whole bunch of different things, both in education and then some things that are kind of segmented with education. And then on the last day, we usually come up with questions that we would like to ask the Minister of Education, and then she'll come and answer them to the best of her ability. So this year, on the first day of the meeting, it was just an evening meeting. So the minister just came and greeted us, and we introduced ourselves. That was about it for that day. The next day, we did a session on leadership strengths. So we took a survey the day before on, like, it was basically like a personality test, and it identified what our greatest leadership strengths were, what our weakest ones were. My greatest one this year was humor, and my worst was teamwork. So I guess that kind of says about me. And then as a returning member, I also talked about, like, I presented on a leadership strength that I improved last year. So I talked about creativity, because it was like number like 20-ish last year, and this year it was like 13. So I talked about how, like, with graphic design, and then also like having to get creative with leadership and stuff during the pandemic, that increased that skill. The next session that day was a mental health consultation with jack.org. It's like a nonprofit organization that works with schools to, like, increase mental health. So they just kind of asked us about what our mental health was like during online schooling, and how they thought, like, on a general basis that could be improved, and like what were the barriers to like successful mental health basically for students during online schooling. The next one that day was an education technology session. So I think that they were just trying to get an idea of how students across the province were able to access technology and Wi-Fi, both at home and in their schools now. And then the last one was just like a consultation on the return to school process. So just kind of asking about, like, how masking was going, how social distancing was going, and then how they were finding it with, like, the social distancing guidelines to learn, and like how it was affecting students' learning. The next day we had 3 more sessions. The first one was a presentation from staff at Alberta Ed about, like, the different roles that different people play in the education system. So, like, what's the role of Alberta Ed versus what's the role of the Ministry of Education versus the Alberta Teachers Association versus, like, school boards. So just so that we could, like, kind of figure out how that system works. After that, we had a transportation session with Nathan Newdorf, and he just kind of asked us about how we get to school. Lots of people brought up their bus routes, especially this year. Lots of bus routes have gotten really long, so we took, like, some information on that. And then the last thing that we did was we had a Q&A with the Speaker of the Alberta Legislature, Nathan Cooper. And so he was just in his car, and we asked him some kind of, like, fun questions about what it's like to kind of moderate the discussion in the legislature. We asked him what he thought of the presidential debate, so that was pretty interesting. And then on the final day, it was just another evening meeting, and we asked the minister our questions. This time around, my question was about the switch to literacy and numeracy in the curriculum, and I was wondering how that would affect critical thinking, especially in the social studies curriculum, just because that's, like, a very, like, thinking heavy course. So I was just wondering if, like, the vision was it to become more theory based or whatever. And she basically just said that it shouldn't really affect how teachers teach on a class-to-class basis, but it should just more kind of be a general guideline of what the content would be. So that was her answer to my question. Yeah, so that was my weekend.
Thank you, that's great. Does anybody have any questions for Nick? Trustee Long?
And what did you think of the presidential debate?
Oh, I don't know. It was interesting to watch.
Very much so. Any other, Trustee Yegas?
I really liked your question you asked to the minister. That was a really good question. And were you satisfied with her answer?
Yeah, I was kind of hoping for a bit more, like, specific answer, but I understand that it is something that kind of teachers decide in their classes, so I could see maybe why it might be a bit general.
Anything else? Okay, yeah, go right ahead, Trustee McKee.
I mean, you've been there like twice now, and I mean, like your experience that you've actually gone through is just remarkable. I mean, not a whole lot of people, like especially students like yourself, get to experience something like that. So for myself, like you, let's just sit back in awe sometimes and says, like I can't believe I'm here, and this is such a great opportunity for me. So I mean, I know you think that way, but anyway, thank you for doing what you do, and it's like you've done very well.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes, echo that. Thank you for providing the student voice that sometimes is always lacking when it comes to making big decisions up in government. So I think it's crucial that the government hears our students and hears their voices and helps them form their decisions and what they're making. So continue the good work, Nick.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Have a great day.
Yeah.
All right, well, moving on in our agenda to back up to F8, our Audit Committee update. Trustee Brad Toon, Audit Committee Chair, will present an update to the Board of Trustees regarding the Audit Committee.
So thank you, everyone. As you know, at our previous special meeting that we had, we approved our 2 public members, Martha Radcliffe from here in Fort Macleod and Marilyn Welsh from Pincher Creek. And again, we express our gratitude for their willingness to join us and be the integral public members and faces on our board for the next 2 years. So really excited about the continuity that'll help provide to upcoming board after an election, not knowing what the makeup of the next board will be. That will ensure we'll have some key members continuing on in that role. So tonight, actually, after this meeting, we're going to be meeting with our auditor, doing our pre-audit meeting, and appreciate that opportunity and to speak with the auditor. As you're well aware of, we're going with our new auditor for the first time, so it'll be interesting to kind of see some of the differences in procedure and stuff, and looking forward to that. And then in just a little over a week, again, we'll have another meeting to bring forward a recommendation to approve the audit. I believe they're wrapping that up on around the 19th of the month. So it's kind of a quick turnaround, and appreciate all our committee members' willingness to free up their schedule in such a short amount of time so we could have these meetings. But it's going to be really important for work for us to do, and looking forward to seeing the fruits of this new committee. Yes. Is there anything else our other committee members have to highlight from what's happened in the last couple weeks?
Nope, I think that's great. We'll just see what our next meeting tonight, we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Thanks. Sorry, I should have jumped up to F6 and not F8, but we'll go back up to F6 now. So we'll go to our career practitioner report. Chad Kuzik, Associate Superintendent, Curriculum and Innovation, will present information on the career practitioners within the Livingston Range School Division to the Board of Trustees. Thank you,
And I'll
Chad.
make this quick, I promise.
That's fine.
But there's some really interesting things that are taking place with this group right now. So if you skip to the next slide, Nikki, I basically kind of highlighted some of the stuff when we talk about work preparation, and there's an improvement we saw in this area. And again, looking at potential reasons why and what are some of the things we're doing right now. If you skip to the next slide, you'll notice that this is from our school survey data that looks at us against the nation, if you will, to say, and our kids and what their thoughts are and what they're thinking about right now. And you can see we're pretty similar to the most of the nation in many things, except for that one. It's interesting with work. That one's interesting. I would say that some students know they're going to work right after school, where most of ours look as if they're going to trade college or they don't know yet, which is normal. With 22% is definitely normal. So, and then you look at what they want to pursue after graduation, and yes, I know what I want to do. And 40% of our kids is right in line with what's happening in Canada right now with kids that age. So, so that was interesting to see, and at least comparing with the Canadian norm and us, and where we're kind of at. And male and female, sorry, the 40% is the male and female. So that was interesting to see that, yes, it's pretty equivalent across the board, that we know, yes, the kids know what they want to do. So if you click on the next slide, here's our team. Letty Crosscurry and Christy Bazell, that's been with us for a while. Both have been with us. And as we're working through that and kind of their responsibilities now, we're down one member of the team. And so we're doing it with two now, and as best we possibly can to spread the load evenly amongst them. Having those schools up there, most of the focus is here based on the resources that we're able to provide them, that we're focusing really on the high school for the most part right now. For our 10 to 12, that's our most key areas to be able to work with and be able to help those kids, especially during what's happened with COVID and the pandemic that's taking place. So if you click on the next one, so that's our team, all this stuff, this is all the great strategies they're doing and doing. So I'll go through briefly some of this. Is that they're really helping the high school students learn right now, and I know this because my daughter's part of this, about scholarships, what's available to them right now, working with those grade 12 staff, grade 12 students and staff to be able to say, okay, what's available to you? They're sitting down with all the high school to look at their own school goals, especially around careers and so they're sitting down with all the high school principals and then making them continuously aware what supports are available through them to be able to do that. They network and collaborate with the school staff, so they're working with staff and ways to connect. I'm excited about having the off-campus join some of our meetings with the practitioners to be able to find some synergies and some ways that we can work together and better support our kids. And then they collaborate also with the counselors and youth workers. The community members part is also interesting too, is they're consistently the strategies to work with the community to be able to identify the careers that exist in our areas and how we can bring them into how we can better support our kids. A lot of the students we're finding, they don't know what they don't know, and making sure we're advertising and promoting all the initiatives, the programs, the things that are out there for the kids, and with the parents to be able to say, here's some things available to you in a variety of platforms as well. We're doing career assessments with the kids. We do that since early on to see, just to get them thinking about that, and that continues to take place. And it's an important part of kids thinking and students thinking about what's in front of them. And develop quality job searching too. I know, again, and bring my daughter into this, help my daughter to be able to see, how do I search for good jobs as a summer student, as an adult, my future, what do I need to know if I want to be this career, what do I need to have as far as education. And then I put the last one here, this is new from last year. I'm asking our career practitioners to support students in grade 12 in tracking graduation requirements. I want to ensure that all our students know, and this is in combination with the counselors at the school, at teachers, parents, just an extra support there to say, do you know where you're at in your graduation, in your learning journey? What do you need based on some of the things that may have taken place over the last year, 2 years, 3 years, right? We need to know that they're aware that they're missing certain credits. And so I have them going through the students' DAR as well, the PASI, to look and just to make sure that we're all on the same page and we know what needs to take place. So that's been a lot of the focus here early on for sure. So when we got started, the students had an idea where they're at. We're meeting individually with every grade 12 student, with all our students, 10, 11, 12, and we'll get there. But right now, we make sure we're working with those grade 12 students to start looking and getting those post-secondary applications in if they choose to. You'll see in the next slide the specific next steps, but we continue to provide many sessions, many virtual sessions in this environment to have kids explore careers and pathways and trying to provide students opportunities to learn more in a kind of a networked environment to be able to work with them and understand what they need to do. We're working with career transitions to attend EPIC virtually this year, but as you'll see in the next slide as well, you don't have to go yet, Nikki, it's okay. I'm jumping all over the place. As you'll see as well, we're actually going to take the initiative to start our own EPIC. This is basically a job fair for kids, and kids go to it, and we have students attend to there, and they go and they can learn more about all the, and also the post-secondary and things of that nature. This is an opportunity for us to do our own, and we might look at doing that. Transition meetings with grade 12s as we get closer to the end there, making sure they're ready for transition into the workforce. And then they've been working on last year underneath Richard. We're going to continue doing this, implementing a 10 to 12 system, ensure all aspects of career development are addressed, meaning that we have a spreadsheet to identify what the child was saying in grade 10, 11, 12, where they're at, what are their thoughts, what are their goals, how can we help them, how did we support them? So that's something we continue to work on and have. Dual credit's been great with this group. I got to have them be more aware of dual credit. We have small numbers this year, as you may have guessed, because really only the online dual credit is something that's available to us. However, we're still using that to say this could be an opportunity for you to try out the college level, or to have something for you to have, credit for now and credit for later if you decide to go in there, and just give you opportunities and options. And we're working on a career practitioner's handbook. I know, working with Danny, he was working with me as well too, as a strategy to say we need to capture all that we do someplace. And our webpage is one place, and our documentations of some sorts, or our planning are some. But wouldn't it be nice to have a career practitioner's handbook? I know Daryl and I went to Edmonton years ago, and we looked at the career pathways in Edmonton Public, and still that keeps coming back, because we might need to work towards some kind of resource available all the time in case other people are in and out of different positions and things of that nature, to have something Livingston Range has to say this is what we've developed over the last 5 years. So if we click on the last slide, this is what we're doing right now. So we're organizing 2 virtual events we're going to try to do each semester. And Letty's taking one on for, I think it's a Little Guys for a mini healthcare session that will be taking place with their communities, and they'll be virtualing in and be able to meet the kids and ask questions and have a session. The career action plans with grade 12s, again, I spoke to that. We're meeting with all the grade 12s. We want to meet with all of them by semester 1 and make sure we have that action plan for those kids to be able to do this. I should remind everybody, we're able to meet with large number of students now because we're doing a lot of it virtually. So we're having kids sign up for Google Meets and meet with them one-on-one. So that's been good. And our staff is attending. I know Christy has been, for sure, has been attending in-class sessions and talking to larger amounts of kids. We just have to be careful, again, with cohorts, and we don't want to be everywhere all the time, and make sure we're controlled in that. But doing a good job with what's been provided for us to be able to connect with kids. Develop career pathways for grades 10, 11, and that's that survey, kind of understand. We still have Zello. It's a software we often use for some of these surveys. Understand it's a platform. Career cruising, it used to be, when turned to Zello. That will most likely be going away due to budgetary cuts. So we're looking at ways to be able to create our own survey to be able to get that information we need to do that. So we're developing that. I talked about developing our own version of EPIC and tracking transition rates to post-secondary. I mentioned that in my last presentation, that I want to know in 6 years where our kids go, and all the kids that go to the States, all the kids that go to BC, all the kids that go other places that I'm unable to track where they went, and to see what's happened over these last 6 years. So we want to make sure we have those relationships built with those kids to be able, and the families, to connect with them and say, hey, can you just tell us, what your plans are, what happened, and reconnect with them to see how we're doing beyond what's already been provided us with data, and to make adjustments that way. So I ran through that quick. I know these 2 lovely ladies would have done a way better job than what I just did, but I tried to capture it as best I could of, this is still very busy for this group, and working towards some of those things we established and goals that we established years ago. And open up for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? No. It's great to see that all the work that they are doing, and even in this time, virtually is, again, being able to reach so many kids, it's important. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, on to F7, our reentry update. Daryl Seguin, Superintendent, will update the Board of Trustees on the reentry progress in the division.
Well, great, thank you. I know you've had a lot of information brought to you today. I'll try and keep this quick. Reentry, as you know, is a constantly changing landscape. It seems like every week there's new information that comes from either the Chief Medical Officer of Health or the Minister of Education or government. And so we have to try and keep caught up on that, and then make the adjustments to our division reentry plan and the processes and procedures in our schools as needed. I would say overall, our school-based staff are doing an incredible job of ensuring student safety. They're doing incredibly well, and we appreciate all that they're doing. The students as well have quickly adapted to the new processes and procedures, and they are happy to be back at school. Our virtual school and home education students have a new principal. You know that we hired Tara Tanner. We moved her out of Matthew Halton, and we backfilled Matthew Halton with some existing staff there to be the new administration. But between the virtual school and the home education, Jeff shared the numbers with you, we're close to 500. So if you thought about that assignment, that's our largest school in the division actually now this year. And so that's definitely a shift from last year, how our school division looked. To accommodate, as we've mentioned before, to accommodate the shift in students and the choice of programs that have taken place, we've hired a number of additional staff that we've talked about there, both teachers and support staff. Some of the support staff are helping out with the virtual school as well, and some are hired into our traditional schools, I guess, in our communities as the student needs there have changed, over the summer as new students have come in and situations have changed. We've tried to be flexible and use some of the extra dollars that we've got to be able to support those students as they've come into our school system as well. We have recently advertised for instructional replacement personnel. So just a reminder that those are non-certificated classroom supervisors that would come in if we are unable to find a certificated staff member, certificated substitute teacher to come in. Then we have some options in place that we can go down the list and have an adult in there to supervise those students. Something else that will be coming up next week. So LRSD is participating in the government's K-12 OH&S school inspection program. And so we have ISS, FP Walsh, and AB Daly that will be inspected. And so I think the health inspectors coming from Occupational Health and Safety inspectors coming from Lethbridge, and Laura, our OH&S coordinator, will be there, and a few others. And so we'll take a walk through the schools, and that will be a really good glimpse of what we're doing well, and if there's anything there that might need some improvements. We are also moving to, some schools, I guess, have moved to in-person parent-teacher interviews and in-person school council meetings, but others are still doing them virtually. So that's a site-based decision. Where it is in person, they've taken, our school administrators have taken some really careful precautions about spacing them out properly, masking the people that come into the building, some cases limiting that parent-teacher interview to one parent, and then disinfecting and cleaning the areas afterwards. And others have chosen to continue those virtually. Extracurricular is about to start in LRSD again. So I met with a group of 5 administrators early, or I guess it was late in September and then early into October, and to talk about reentry. They put together a proposal that was shared with the entire admin council and supported by them. And so following that, we had a group of our athletic directors and school administrators get together on the last inter-school collaboration day, and they've put together a very thoughtful plan of how extracurricular can happen safely within LRSD and still meet the mini leagues and the sports guidelines from the province as well. So I won't go into great detail there, but they are starting with volleyball. It will be a season that will be running from October 19th through Christmas. And I believe it is the north-south, 3 high schools will be one league, and then east-west will be one league that get together a few times during those couple of months to play each other and to get some physical activity in there. So they're looking forward to starting that. After Christmas, in the new year, the plan would be to start basketball, and it would be from January through mid-March. So just a quick snapshot of some of the things that have happened, and open to any questions that you might have.
Trustee Long?
I know this was discussed before, but I need a reminder. Community organizations, specifically at Crozes Pass Track, where are we at with having them come back into the buildings? When I say Crozes Pass Track, that's a private organization, not school. And then there are other things as well, that community.
So I'm not sure, I guess, looking for clarity around your question, are they allowed in the school to start working with students? Is that your question?
Yes. So will community groups, where are we as far as allowing them to come back into the school in the evenings and on weekends?
Yeah, so the recommendation in discussions with our administrators was that let's just start our own athletics first and make sure that that is working. And down the road, then we'll take another look at the user groups. But for now, we're still trying to limit the number of people that are in our buildings. And we had a little bit of a challenge in trying to, as Phil mentioned, make sure we've got enough bus drivers that can handle the extracurricular routes as well. So it's important for that recruitment of drivers to be happening, so we can transport students by bus if they need to go to a different community where possible. And then the additional custodial time too that it will take to clean the building. And there's enhanced cleaning protocols that need to take place when you are doing athletics, sports and teams and that sort of thing too. So we just felt like we would keep the doors shut to outside user groups for now. Let's just continue with this slow reentry and safe reentry for our students and limit it to just our athletes for now.
Perfect, thanks. Any other questions? Yeah, Trustee McKee?
So what would be the status of the high school football? Then I know what that the Comsted High School in Clarisholm and Pincher Creek, and there, is that progressing, or is that just going to be postponed until the following year? Or
So I spoke with one of the high school coaches, and it's so late, obviously, in the season that they thought they might just work on conditioning and that sort of thing, weightlifting, conditioning. But there is still discussion happening on the provincial level about when provincial competitions could be held, and so we hear that probably wouldn't be allowed to happen or sanctioned by ASAA until Alberta moves to stage 3 of their reentry kind of planning. Stage 3, or I think it's called stage 3. We're in scenario 1, but it's stage 3 where the athletics, I think, competitions would be allowed. And so there is talk of perhaps football. If there was a provincial championship, maybe that could be moved to the spring as opposed to the fall. So yeah, it's like I said, it's constantly changing, and there's continual discussions going on at all different levels. But for now, we just felt like, that physical activity is really important. And for some kids, that's a main reason why they come to school, right? They really love to be part of a team and to have that extracurricular opportunity. And so we wanted to provide that in a safe way. And we're not even playing other teams outside of our school division right now. We're just keeping it all within our school division, where the communities in our school division have done a really great job of keeping community cases low and or nil in some cases. And so that, you can see, provides for a real safe environment in our schools as well. So we're going to keep it contained within our school division for now, the athletic play. And I should say, it's more than, when we say extracurricular, it's more than just the athletics too. So it could be other things like potentially a drama production or a band performance, anything that would fall under that extracurricular that can be done according to the guidance documents, and we could be in compliance, then we could look at starting those again as of October 19th.
Great, thanks. Trustee Toon?
Yeah, thank you for the update. I really appreciate what you've done in our administrators on working on this. I know that other jurisdictions had blanket just canceled everything, and we're doing a longer wait and see, but with the ability to follow the guidelines and the amazing job that you've done making sure that we're following the safety protocols. I know our communities and the feedback I'm sure other trustees are receiving as well has been overwhelmingly positive on how the staff and everybody's doing things so far, and the optimism of these things opening up again, everyone really appreciates. So I want to thank you for that.
Yeah, for sure. The safety piece is really important to us, and I've talked to our administrators about this being, we're on a continuum, and right now we've got the conditions in our communities and our schools where we can allow this to happen in a safe way. Should that start to change and it gets to a certain point, we may have to pull back a little bit on that and have some more restrictions. But for now, things look good, and hopefully we can carry on and the kids can be a part of a team and be involved in these extracurricular. And and be another reason why they want to be in our schools, right? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, everybody, that concludes our agenda. We just need to move on to our 3 key messages. What would you like to see our 3 key messages be today? Trustee Long.
Rock the diploma. That was really exciting. Except for the social studies. I don't know what's going on there.
Okay, 2 other. Yeah, Trustee Yegus.
I'd like to, the youth council, I think they did a fantastic.
Okay. Anything else? We need 1 more.
There's too many good things to choose from for just
I
one
know.
more. That's the problem.
Madam Chair,
Yes?
did we, I have to admit, I'm a little lost. I had TIBA the day you had your meeting of the whole and board meeting, so I wasn't there for that. Then I got home, and as of that Monday morning, I didn't have a computer, and I'm feeling like I've been gone for a month. Did we discuss non-instructional supervision at our parent councils?
I did.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if
Oh.
we had or not. We did that.
Yeah.
Okay.
What about discussing that after some of the decisions we made last year, we are in the black instead of in the red for our transportation for the first time in years?
Okay. Sounds good.
No? Yeah? No?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh,
There you
yeah,
are.
that sounds good.
Madam Chair, I was just going to say, maybe the PD budget one too. The 5, that, I mean, that's good
We'll go with
information.
4.
Yeah, thank you.
PD budget. Okay, but that's it. Yeah. All right, everybody, we got our 4 key messages. Now I'll need a motion to go in camera. Trustee Long. At, what time is it? 3:55. Okay, recommendation. In recognition of the extra work our amazing staff does for students every day. Oh my goodness, I am going to start over. In recognition of the extra work our amazing staff does for every student every day, the Board of Trustees has made the following modifications to the calendar. November 12th and 13th will be non-operational days for this 2020-21 calendar year. The recommendation is moved by Trustee Yegus. Would you like to speak to it?
Yes, it also follows with our value of wellness, and this is hopefully for our mental health, 2 days. That's it.
Any questions or comments? I think the recommendation speaks for itself, that we appreciate all the hard work that our staff has been putting in through this COVID-19. I know this is an exceptional year, so yeah, I think it just speaks for itself. So all in favor, if there's no other? Passed. Thank you. Motion to adjournment, Trustee Burdette.